This is the Dery Brothers Tribecast, a podcast for diehard Cleveland Indians fans. Presented to you by waitingfornextyear.com. Now, here are the hosts, Matt and Todd Dery.
All right, everybody, welcome in another edition of the Dery Brothers Tribecast. Matt and Todd with you after another up and down 3-3 week for the Indians as they get ready to play two games, a Tuesday and Wednesday in Miami, and then come home for a weekend series with the Seattle Mariners. Tribe currently at 15-12. 2 games back of the Twins in the AL Central. Matt in Detroit here. Todd Dery, of course, live and direct in Cleveland. Mandy Bell, our first guest, will join us coming up in a little bit from MLB.com, a brand new beat reporter for the Indians for MLB.com. Will join us in a little bit. Excited to talk to Mandy about all things Tribe. We're brought to you by our friends at Groove Ride, and also brought to you by waitingfornextyear.com, where this podcast originates. Todd, what's going on, buddy?
Well, just living that dream. It was good to see you this past weekend. We got to take in Friday night's Tilt together, which was fun. Nice off day today, so we got in the interview with Mandy Bell, which you guys will enjoy. And it's always a pleasure to talk Tribe with you, my friend.
Dude, it was fun Friday night. Caught the game, together at the pad there on the east side of Detroit, and it was fun. This team is what it is right now. There were some high moments for the week. There were some low moments for sure. The starting pitching's been pretty good. The Carrasco performance last night was pretty darn good, and then the bottom, the wheels just fell off. The offense is doing what the offense has been doing, which is highly inconsistent. There's not one guy that's hitting the cover off the ball right now. It's Santana is slowed down. But I think Todd, we'd take a split in Houston all day. Where you're playing 4 games against that team and you win the first 2. I think we'll take a split.
When we discussed this last week, I believe we both said, if we can split, that's great, because we're talking about, arguably the best team in the American League. Didn't have to face Verlander, which was a good thing. But, after you win the first 2 games, it's kind of disappointing to not get at least one of those last 2. But again, this is an Orioles. This is an Astros team that lineup is lethal. Great arms in the pen. Their rotation is very good. It's not nearly as good as it was in the last couple of years. But the way this Indians offense is, you never know what you're going to get. So I'll take a 2-2 split in Houston. It was more disappointing to split at home with that sad sack Marlins team, but the first game of that series got out of hand when Carrasco had to come out after 4 innings. When, if you remember, Carlos Santana booted that ball at first, and then instead of eating a throw he should have eaten, he threw wide of the bag, and Carlos got wrapped up and came up limping and finished the 4th, but had to come out. And luckily, he didn't end up missing a start. So,
yeah, I mean, you look at this situation. You look at this situation, and you see a few things. Number one, Jose Ramirez continues to struggle, and I know we're going to talk to Mandy about it. I'm not quite so sure that this whole notion of Tito and everybody saying, "Oh, he'll get it together." He's just not hitting the ball hard. He's jumpy in the box. The numbers are terrible. He's still below 200. And it's a huge concern. And Paul Hoynes today in PlayingDealerCleveland.com ripping the offense. And, the guys on Sunday Night Baseball last night. And that broadcast, by the way, Todd, is an abomination. And I'm a huge Matty Vasgersian fan, but the rest of it is just brutal. A-Rod's worse than – I'll take Jessica Mendoza isn't terrible. But A-Rod's awful. Shots of the outfield, interviews during the game. Santana's hitting a home run. They're playing a taped interview from Tito during the timeout. By then, it's old news. That broadcast sucks, but that's neither here nor there. It's horrible. And no Buster Olney. We missed Buster on that broadcast. I know he's sick or something, but the guys on the broadcast last night saying, Jose's going to be back, everything's going to be fine. That's a huge concern. And they were talking last night about not having that right-handed bat in the middle of the lineup and in need of that. They tried Hanley Ramirez. That didn't work. But the bottom line is Jose Ramirez has to be Jose Ramirez or this thing's not going to work.
I completely agree. And, last night they faced the lefty Wade Miley, who, in my opinion, stinks. I know he was good last year in Milwaukee, and now he looks okay in Houston. That guy, to me, is a bad fit starter in the National League. He's Ryan Dempster. He's Kyle Loge, one of those guys. But you're right. There's two things. Number one, when you're facing a left-handed pitcher and you're batting Jordan Luplow fifth straight up from the minors, that's not a good sign. I know, he's trying to balance it out, righties and lefties, but that's an old way of thinking, but that's what Tito does. Jordan Luplow shouldn't be batting fifth at any time protecting Carlos Santana. Why would Carlos see anything to hit ever when that's the next guy behind him? And number two, getting back to Jose Ramirez, the numbers don't lie. I mean, we can all sit here and say he'll be fine, he'll be fine, he'll be fine. But this now goes back to basically July 1st of last year that he's done nothing. This season, I'm just looking at the numbers, 188 with an OPS of 572. Eek.
It's brutal. And he's a terrific player, but he's not
awesome.
he's not producing. So, we're not talking about taking him out of the lineup or anything like that.
But you can't do that. No. He's still one of your best players.
But something has to be fixed. He plays every day. You want to give him a day off? I understand the Indians have days off out the wazoo right now, but drop him in the order, something, because
I don't know about giving him a day off. I also don't know about dropping him in the order. Because
this isn't working.
The alternatives are so bad. I mean, okay, let's say, hey, let's give him a day off. That means Max Moroff's going to play third. Okay, that's no good. The bench right now of basically Mike Freeman, Jordan Luplow, Max Moroff, and Kevin Plawecki, or as I like to refer to them as the Republican senators for obvious reasons. But in all honesty, you don't have any good options off the bench, and you got to play this guy, and you got to let him play through it. There's no way that you can sit him. And I don't even think dropping him in the order is going to do any good, because all we've done is bitch and complain about why is Naquin hitting third? Why is Luplow hitting third? Why is Jake Bauers hitting third? Well, because Jose Ramirez has to hit third. He has to be up there. I'd still rather have him up there than the majority of the guys in the lineup.
Well, yeah, no.
And he's just – it's the pull happy stuff that is starting to, bother me.
No question. And I'm not saying I'm panicked yet. But it's not, and he had a rough April last year. I get that, but like you said, he's not driving the baseball. He had the game against the Marlins last week where it looked like he was back. Then goes to Houston, and again he gets jumpy. And the Astros handle him. They handled him in the playoffs last year. They handled him in this series. I mean, I know last night he had a couple of hits. I think he had the one that was he had the solid single to left. He had a blooper as well. But they've got to get him going, and it lengthens the lineup. It highlights Lindor and Jose and Carlos at the top, and it takes some pressure off of everybody else. So this offense has been subpar, but a lot of it I think this year has got to fall on Jose Ramirez's shoulders. It has to, and I figured he'd be better once Lindor came back. He's been a little bit better, but it's still not good enough, and it's a huge concern. And like you said, Luplow batting fifth. If Jose's hot and the pitchers just had to go through Jose and then Santana back-to-back, then I don't have an issue with it. But when Jose's an automatic out and Luplow's hitting fifth against lefties, it's definitely concerning. And now Jason Kipnis is cooling off again. So, this offense remains an enigma. You're not going to get rid of Kipnis. You're not going to get rid of Ramirez, but someone else has to step up. But Jose's the number one guy that's got to produce. He has to.
And this, like you said, these guys got to step up. And to my point from before, you don't have many other options. You just don't. Kipnis was 0 for 16 this weekend in the 4 games. Took 4 0 for 4s. This is going to happen. I mean, when he came back and he had the professional bats and he looked good in that Mariners series and we did get a little excited, I'd still rather have him than the alternatives at this point. But, I think we all got ahead of ourselves and kind of jumped out and said, oh, well, if this is the season we're going to get from Kipnis, then we'll be in good shape. Speaking of the offense, being moribund, let me read you one paragraph from Paul Hoynes' piece today, which is Monday. He says, the offense is another story. The Indians split this 4-game series with the Astros while scoring just 12 runs. The split was possible because their pitchers limited the Astros to 12 runs as well. What the Indians have is a first-division starting rotation and a decent bullpen strapped to the back of an offense that can be called only one thing: unacceptable. This is no one's fault but ownership.
Well, I mean, look. Yeah, no, I mean, Hoynesy never pulls any punches and never holds back.
Hammer's right there.
He is. Look, they elected to go. I'm not. Ownership was tied to the Encarnacion Bowers Yandy trade. I get that. They wanted to rid themselves of the Edwin contract, and certainly Carlos Santana has been more than an acceptable replacement. But yes, there were guys certainly out there for more money that would have helped this team a lot earlier in the offseason that were not signed. And look, Adam Jones is having a decent year in Arizona. Marwin Gonzalez has been a disaster for the Twins, and we wanted both of those guys. So, take your pick on one being good, one being a bust. They tried Hanley Ramirez. That didn't work. They're trying Carlos Gonzalez. He's been meh so far, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's now seeing live bullets for the first time on a consistent basis in a while. He didn't really have a spring training. But yes, there is another bat that needs to be added. We'll ask Mandy Bell about Oscar Mercado. But again, you bring Mercado up, where's he going to play? They like Leonis Martin. He's been their best power bat. Jake Bowers, they're giving every opportunity in left field. But, in right field, Naquin all of a sudden's hitting. Not that he drives the ball and it's extra base power and it's home runs, but Naquin is not the issue right now. He's not.
No, and that's the thing. The move... The Luplow move, I get. You send Greg Allen down. Listen, you and I both love Greg Allen, and I really wanted him to succeed. But guy's 4 for 36, 105. That's not going to cut it. And basically, he had become a late-inning pinch runner and defensive replacement, which now the team does not have, yet you're still carrying Max Moroff and Mike Freeman, which I don't understand. But Greg Allen is the kind of guy I think needs to play every single day to get in a rhythm, and I'm not sure that he is, good with handling that role as the extra outfielder. With that said, I think they wanted to bring up Luplow and give him another more extended shot because his first time around he didn't play all that much, and make it a strict platoon in right field with Naquin. The next move to happen is going to be Mercado. I think that if Mercado comes up, it's not to be an extra guy; it's to be an everyday guy.
Right,
and I understand
he has to play. He has to get it back.
Mercado up here, absolutely,
of course.
I'm no fan of Naquin, and I'm certainly no fan of Luplow. But we have to let that play out first. And when and if that fails, Mercado will get the shot next. I still think when it comes down to the trade deadline in July, because there's only one hard deadline this year. Whoever comes onto this team, should they add a right-handed bat, is going to be in a spot where they can then either move Carlos Gonzalez and play him in right field and play this new guy in left field or whatever it might be, essentially taking the Luplow-Naquin spot. So as much as we all want Oscar Mercado, I think when and if he comes up, it's to be an everyday player, and there's not an everyday spot for him right now.
Matt and Todd Dery, it's the Dery Brothers Tribecast, brought to you by waitingfornextyear.com. We are also brought to you by Groove Ride. Todd's going to tell you about this unbelievable workout facility, 3 of them in Northeast Ohio. In 1 second, Mandy Bell will join us next from MLB.com again. But first, Todd, to tell you about Groove Ride. I saw this guy in the flesh, in person this weekend. You're in great shape, buddy.
Someone at our dinner Friday night told me that I had good-looking traps, which was kind of funny.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, but in all seriousness, I went this morning, saw my girl Ashley at boot camp at Groove Ride in Woodmere on Chagrin Boulevard. Worked super hard. It was great. We did a whole different bunch of circuits. Did a little bit of rowing. Did a little bit of work on the rig with some pull-ups. Weight work. We got the whole thing in. It was fantastic, and I've said it many times. This is a place that's really changed my life, and people couldn't be nicer that work there. They have 3 locations depending on where you live. Check them out. at grooveride.com, GROOVERYDE. And if you live downtown or you want to check them out downtown, they're on Reserve Square there across from Perk Park. And the newest location at the shops of Van Aken, they've switched over their yoga into more of it's called Groove Flow, which is kind of cool, and some hip-hop yoga, which you can check out over at Van Aken as well. Check them out at grooveride.com, grooveride.com, GROOVERYDE.com.
All right, Todd, this will be fun. Our first guest here on the Dery Brothers Tribecast, Mandy Bell, who covers the Indians for MLB.com. You read her on Indians.com. Newest member of the beat. Mandy, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How you been?
I've been pretty good. This has been a blast so far. So, yeah, I can't complain in the slightest.
So your background, you're very, very young. You just got started. You just graduated Penn State pretty recently, right? How did this gig come about, and what's your path to Cleveland been like?
Yeah, it's about to be a year now since I've graduated. I graduated last May. I interned with MLB.com the last 2 years. 2 years ago was Baltimore. Last year was New York. And I just sort of was able to find my way in afterwards. I was lucky enough that they were able to keep me on, and we had so much turnover. Like the Indians this year, we had so much turnover on our beat staff, and a lot of things shifted around a little bit, and I got here at the perfect time. It was perfect place, perfect time, and I was able to sneak into the beat at Cleveland. So it worked out really well. Jordan Bastion, who was here before me, he's in Chicago now. He took the place of one of our beats that was there for a very long time. So, it just sort of fell into my lap, which it was the most incredible and grateful experience that I've gone through.
Yeah, what's nice is we have somebody who isn't a Cubs fan originally now, which is good. Now, I love Jordan. He did a great job, and I know this was a lifelong dream for him to go to Chicago and cover the Cubs. So good for him, and a great opportunity for you, obviously. So this is obviously this is your first true professional sports beat, obviously. As a new reporter, how do you handle creating those relationships with players and managers, especially your first time around with a major league team?
Yeah, it's definitely different because I wasn't really sure what I was doing coming into it. I at least had some experience watching Brittany Tiroli in Baltimore, Brian Hoke in New York. So I had some great people that I was able to just take mental notes from the last 2 years on how this all works. But going from New York to Cleveland is as opposite of on the spectrum as you can possibly get. So I leave New York where there's 40 media members every single day on a random Tuesday game, and then I showed up in spring training for Cleveland, and I was the only reporter day one. So in that situation, it sort of just throws you into it yourself, whether you want to or not, and you just start going around and just start building the relationships from day one. So that was really nice. I know there was a whole bunch of reporters that told me it's really nice being in a medium-sized, smaller-sized market teams than bigger markets, just because you can have those relationships. And I didn't really understand what they were saying until I got here. So it's been really, really nice. So I just started from day one to just go around and make sure people knew who I was. So it wasn't strange, especially when I was the only one there to start. And you just start talking to as many people as possible, so it's not as uncomfortable as you go through the season.
Dery Brothers Tribecast. Mandy Bell is our guest from MLB.com, covers the Indians. So what's his clubhouse like? You obviously shadowed some very good professionals in Baltimore and New York, and those are tough markets, certainly, especially with the Yankees. But with this particular market and this particular team, how's that transition been for you?
At first it was just strange, just because you go from New York where everything is very, very buttoned up, and a lot of people are a little bit guarded, and you come here and these guys are so open and they're so fun, and everybody's always in the clubhouse whenever you need them for the most part, and it's in that aspect it's been an extremely fun transition, just because. And now that Francisco Lindor's back, the guys are in there, they're blasting music, they're loud. Lindor's singing 24/7, it seems like. So it's been fun just to be able to see more natural sides of these players than what maybe I did last year in New York, just because the atmosphere is just way different in these two markets. So that's been fun. It's been a little bit different just because you go from New York where there's money's never an issue to a smaller size market where money is an issue. So that was different to cover. There's been a couple of different things that were adjustments to go from these different market sizes. But Cleveland has been an absolute blast so far.
Is Tito the reason for that? I would say camaraderie and maybe camaraderie amongst the players, but also a comfort level for you as a young reporter. Does he kind of set the tone for that?
I couldn't have asked for a better manager to cover in my first for my first year on the beat. I mean, just to be able to sit back and listen to him and talking every single day, he's doing so much on a daily basis. So yes, for sure, for me it's been fantastic, and it seems like he does have that calming, like, bonding effect on the team. I know going into the year, whenever I covered Tribefest downtown, that Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff, they were talking in this Q&A to the crowd, and they were saying, we wouldn't do all of this. We wouldn't be able to have this type of turnover without Tito as the manager. There's just no way, because there's not many people that can get a completely new group of faces and then just join them together as quickly and as seamlessly as Tito can do throughout spring training. So I think everybody sort of had that idea going into it, that he could be one of the only people who could handle this situation as well as he does.
I would definitely agree with you on that. I mean, you weren't here, obviously. You were still in college. But when Tito first came here, the credibility he gave to this organization that was at rock bottom when Manny Acta was fired, it was pretty bad. It was teetering. And when the Terry Francona was being rumored, nobody could believe that he would actually come here, to be honest. And now that he's here, he's totally given a jolt to this organization, and it's been a completely different situation since he's been here. Speaking of Tito and the team, now that Francisco Lindor is back and for the most part they are healthy and you're seeing what the full club looks like, what are your thoughts on this team during this first month of the season and how they've played?
I think going into it, they knew that April was going to be a difficult month for them. They said it 100 different times, and Tito has said it 1,000 different times during spring training, where there's some of these younger guys like Oscar Mercado, who's everyone has their eye on, and he's like, we've seen what April can do, April in Cleveland specifically can do to some of our guys, and we just don't want someone for their first time in the majors to go through that as their first experience. And so they knew April was going to be a challenge, especially not having Lindor, Kipnis, and Cargo. They didn't have some of these guys up with the team yet. And the way that they were able to battle through and still be able to have the record that they had, I think was an extremely positive sign, even especially after losing Mike Clevenger to the injured list now. I mean, there was a whole bunch of hurdles that they had to come over, and they were able to do so in a quiet way, I want to say, because I guess not everyone realizes the actual success that they did have, because I can understand from an Indians perspective how it was frustrating to watch, because the offense was struggling when Lindor was gone. That shortstop position, anyone who filled in there really wasn't producing the same way that, everyone's favorite all-star shortstop would. So I could understand from an Indians perspective how it would be frustrating, but they still were able to. I mean, the other day, Zach Meisel from The Athletic, he tweeted out and said, the Indians are a game back from the best record in baseball. And the fans' responses were very comical. We were just sitting there at post-game just scrolling through them, and everyone's like, oh, I've been so hard on this team, and I didn't realize how close they were. And it just seems like they quietly were able to put together so far a start to the season that people didn't really realize that they were able to do. So I think once it gets into it and Jose Ramirez starts settling in at the plate, Lindor has a few more games under his belt, because he only had 3 games in a rehab assignment. So it was a quick turnover for him to get back. And so once these bats start to settle in a little bit more, things are going to start getting rolling a little bit, because we obviously know what that starting rotation can do. So I think April was a challenge, but they did a lot better than I think even they were expecting through that period.
Mandy Bell with us from MLB.com, covers the Indians. Matt and Todd Dery with you. Dery Brothers Tribecast on waitingfornextyear.com. Mandy, I said at the start of this season, Todd and I discussed it. I said if they can go 500 in April, they're going to be all right. And you're right. At 15-12 right now, you split with the Astros. You know, a week that it's kind of been up and down for sure. But when you look at this team, what do you like about it? What do you feel like there aren't issues at a certain spot? And maybe what are your concerns?
Well, definitely, I mean, everyone going into the season knew the starting rotation had capabilities of being the most dominant in baseball, and the way that they've sat atop the leaderboards of everything so far this year, strikeout rates and almost every possible thing again. I think that just having that as a constant every year for the past 3 years now has been comforting for them, because when all else fails, at least they know they have something to rely on. And just to be able to see someone like Jeffrey Rodriguez when he comes up and he's able to make those starts for Clevenger, and he had 2 strong starts so far. I just think that part of their roster is just so comforting for them to know that they can have that to rely on. And when everyone was panicking a little bit when Clevenger went on the injured list, to know that there is some reinforcements, even if Adam Plutko is still coming back from his forearm strain. So I think that's definitely one where that's just so impressive to watch every night. Just as a baseball fan in general, to be able to show up to the games and be able to watch these guys just dominate through. It seems like 6 innings every single night, and then you find out what happens in the 7th, 8th, and 9th. It's been really fun and impressive. From there, it just depends on the offense, on how that's going to sort of play out, and how Jose Ramirez's bat. Whether that does get hot or whether he continues to struggle. I think he's the biggest question mark at this point. I know Tito keeps saying every single day when we ask him 1,000 different times about, is it nice to see Ramirez starting maybe to have some hits drop in for him? And he's like, I'm telling you guys, he's going to be fine. And there's going to be a point midway through the summer where you look up and he's at the top of every leaderboard possible. We just have to get there. So if he's able to get to that point, then this is a completely different Indians team. It seems like every year they know what they're going to get from Francisco Lindor. They know what they're going to get from some of these guys. Carlos Santana started the year as hot as he possibly could, and he broke his little 0-for-10 streak last night with his 200th homer. So he's starting to maybe come back alive again, and he feels good at the plate, he at least said last night. And so I think it's the big question mark is, can Jose Ramirez snap out of the slump that he's been in since last August, or will he continue to struggle? So I think that's the one to watch.
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, Mandy, one more rotation-related question. Mike Clevenger was in Houston with the team this weekend, and I've been hearing and reading that he's been making some progress, seems to be ahead of schedule. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, he's way ahead of schedule. When Tito found out about the MRI and got the results, he said that Clevenger's not going to even look at a baseball for 6 to 8 weeks. And now here we are sitting just 3 weeks later, and he's already starting to talk about playing catch this week. He was out in the outfield shagging fly balls during batting practice, and you wouldn't be able to tell that he really had an injury at all. He was running all over the place, but he did have to roll every ball back in underhand. He wasn't allowed doing any overhand throws. So he's supposed to play catch. I think they're shooting for before the end of the road trip, so I would assume either tomorrow or Wednesday. And from there, if all goes smoothly, the only assumption would be that they're going to start a throwing program for him. And I think the first day that he's able to be activated off the injured list, since he did get moved to the 60-day, is June 6th. And so I don't see any issues with him being ready by June 6th. I know people were asking me this week, does it seem like he could be back before the All-Star break? I think he could be back a good month before the All-Star break.
Let's get into the really important issues. Paul Hoynes, what is that like being around that individual?
Paul Hoynes is like the nicest guy on the planet. He's like one of my favorite people, and I think he has the most legendary laugh of any person ever. He's been a blast, and it's just nice to have someone with that level of experience, nearly 40 years on the beat, to be able to just ask him any possible question that would ever pop into my head. Since I am so new, I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, as fast as I can, and I don't think there's really any better resource than someone who's done it as long as he has.
But so go ahead, Todd.
Have you heard the legendary Hawk call yet?
I'm sorry, the legendary what?
Okay, so then when you're with him today, you ask him about it, and and he'll let you know, and he'll fill you in. He is a legendary. He can make a sound of a hawk, and everybody knows about it. And he breaks it out like once or twice a year, and it's his number one famous shtick, I guess you could say. So,
but
I'm sure at some point this season you will get it. But I guess you haven't heard it yet. So
no, I haven't.
Oh,
man, I wish I would have known this at spring training.
But
there you go. See, you're learning something new every day here.
How do you deal with, he's a guy that's been around a long time, and I know he's gotten into it with Trevor Bauer, and here you come onto the beat, and you see something like that where you've got to deal with Trevor, you got to deal with Hoynes. What's your, that's not something you're taught, I guess, in journalism school, right? What's your approach sometimes to that, and how's it gone with Trevor so far?
I've had a great relationship with Trevor since even before spring training started. He's one of the ones that that was very first people I made a relationship with whenever I was down there in Goodyear, Arizona. So things have been great with him. I know that he and Hoynes have had their history that has been pretty ongoing, but it's not like that's something that's like pretty obvious in a clubhouse setting. It's not like that the two of them have any visible or palpable tension or anything like that whenever there's anything that's going on. It just seems like there's just people existing in a clubhouse. So it's not like that's something that's anyone really has to deal with. We all know that there's been tweets in the past, but there's nothing that's like ever actually seen or going on in the clubhouse. So it's not what maybe people would think that's going on an everyday basis.
Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, so other than Trevor Bauer, what other players do you find the easiest to deal with so far in the clubhouse?
It's cool because Cleveland, you have Francisco Lindor, who's the face of the franchise, and when you get big stars like that, you always assume that they're closed off to people, that they're, have that too good vibe about them, and he's just one of the most down-to-earth people. And when I was an intern in Baltimore, one of our parts of our job was to fill in on the opposing team side whenever MLB wouldn't send their beat reporters to that city. And Jordan didn't come on a trip 2 years ago at one point, and so I filled in for him. And even at that point, Lindor has not changed in those 2 years, even as much as his fame level has even grown since then. He's just been one of the easiest people that of all the teams that I've covered, and helped out with. He's been one of the easiest and best people that I've covered. And so just to be able to see someone of that caliber, of that stardom and everything, just be such a genuine person, it's been really, really cool. So he's someone that's really, really easy to work with. And honestly, this entire team, when I go up and down the roster, there's not really a bad seed. There's not somebody that you're like, oh man, we have to talk to him post game. There's no one that's really like that at all, and it's been super awesome, and it's been a fantastic team to transition with because you can just talk to anybody whenever you need them, and everyone's so willing and so easy to work with. So it's been really nice.
All right, final thing for Mandy Bell from MLB.com. Her first year on the beat covering the Indians, does a fantastic job. All right, so the narrative out there with the Dolans and with Paul Dolan, obviously you've seen it now, and there is an angry part of this fan base that, even last night sees the lineup, sees Jordan Luplow hitting fifth. Here's the ESPN guys talking about, well, they need to add a bat, but that's not their philosophy. What's your approach? How do you feel about kind of the situation here in Cleveland with the money? And do you think eventually a Mercado comes up, or they do add a bat and do so financially?
I think before adding a bat, they will give Mercado a shot. I don't think it's far away. I think Mercado Maybe not in April because, like I said, they've said 1,000 times they know what April can do to a guy. So I think maybe giving him a little bit more time to get some reps down in AAA before coming up. But his numbers are fantastic right now down in AAA. So it's hard to ignore that whenever he's producing the way that he is. So I think maybe even in a few more weeks that he could be up with the big league club, and so I think that they give that a shot and hope that that's the answer to their questions. Obviously, they might need a little bit more than just one guy to come alive in that lineup to change things, but maybe not. Maybe he sparks something that they've been missing. So I think they're going to give him a shot. But they've said since the off season, since the winter meetings, that what team they have going into the season is not going to be the team that they have come September. And they're willing to add at the trade deadline. They've shown that the past few years whenever they make moves in late July. And they're going to do the same this year. They said that their approach this season is going to be wait basically until that time period and see are we in contention this year, and of course they're going to assume that they're going to be in contention after their history the past few seasons, but they said if things continue to stay the same and they're in contention, they expect a move to be made. So they're not done yet. They're going to look at their options still, but yeah, like I said, it's a different way of having to go about things and more of a smaller market size than what I was used to covering last year in New York, where money is never really an issue. So Antonetti and Chernoff both always seem to be putting it together like one of the most difficult puzzles that they've ever had to work on. But the way that they've done it, the way that Francona has responded to the way they've done it, it just seems like they've made every best option they possibly could under the circumstances that they have at the moment. And Tito said 1,000 times, I trust those guys 100%, and whoever they're able to get, I think that they're going to put us in the best situation to win. So they seem to be thinking ahead a little bit and planning for that trade deadline move.
Mandy, can't thank you enough for joining us. Appreciate the visit. Good luck the rest of the way, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
All right, there she is, Mandy Bell, MLB.com. Todd, our first guest, a success. She was fantastic.
How about that, huh? She was great. It was good to have her. We appreciate it. First guest. She's always going to be live on in all of her glory to be the first guest for this glorious podcast.
And I agree with what she says. I've been saying this since the start of the year that a 500 April to me, and I know there's been some cupcakes on this schedule, and certainly you're disappointed when you get swept by the Royals and barely squeak by a 2-game sweep with the Marlins and all that stuff. But like she said, Cargo hasn't gotten enough at bats. Lindor's just coming back. Kipnis just coming back. No, not an excuse. But I think this team, once the weather warms up, to steal an old Lynn Henning bit from Detroit, I think it will be better. And I think she, listen, for somebody like her that is 21, 22 years of age and on her first beat covering an MLB team, this is a pretty good team to be covering.
Absolutely. A couple things I thought that my biggest takeaway is, number one, she had mentioned that she thinks Mercado will be here sooner rather than later, and that the organization did not want to expose Mercado to, quote unquote, April in Cleveland, which, I found interesting. And then also, she had mentioned that she thinks she'll see Clevenger before the end of the All-Star break, which would be fantastic considering a co-host of this podcast once predicted at the beginning of the year that that he wouldn't be back this entire season. So there you go. But if
That's true.
They can indeed get Clevenger back before, sometime in June, that's going to be huge considering, how great he pitched those first two starts.
And listen, it's not like Rodriguez has wet the bed either. He's been just fine. Obviously not as dominant, as Clevenger, but
he has been good. But I'm not saying I want to take it with a grain of salt, but his two starts were against the Royals and the Marlins, who are the two worst teams in baseball. So if he comes back, the next time around, he will be starting. It'll be against the White Sox most likely, which is another terrible team. So, but I'm saying if he comes back around and he has to make a few more starts and he starts dominating, one of the better teams, then we really got something.
It's like Kramer when he was at karate against the kids. Kramer, what?
Leading the dojo?
Kramer, what are you doing? I'm dominating.
All right, Maddie, I got one more topic that I think we need to discuss. We were watching the Tribe game together Friday night, and Corey Kluber was bobbing and weaving through five, as Matt Underwood would say.
That was a five and fly. There was, as Underwood would say, there was some double barrel action going on in the bullpen.
But in all seriousness, this was the guy who was the ace of the staff, two-time Cy Young Award winner. We've talked about it on this podcast, that we think we've seen his best, and he's clearly scuffling. And, he got through five. I think he was at about 100 pitches or 102 pitches, and he had gotten a 1, 2, 3, fifth, and you and I said, I think we should send him back out for the sixth. And Tito took him out and went to Simber. In that instance, it popped into my head, this guy's become a five and fly pitcher. He walked another guy with the bases loaded for the fourth time in 4 starts before doing it 0 times in his career, and he's clearly scuffling. And if the playoffs started today and the Indians were in and they could set their rotation however they want.
You're really doing this now?
Assuming this is healthy. I'm doing this now, assuming everybody is healthy, and I know there's a lot of season for him to get himself right. But if this happened today and you have a healthy Clevenger the way he was pitching, I don't think he gets a playoff start. Not only do I think he won't get a start, I think he's fifth. I think I put Bieber in front of him.
No, you're not putting Bieber in front of him. I'm not ready to go that far. I'm with you. When Clevenger was healthy, Carrasco and Bauer, yes, I would say Kluber's been the fourth best starter. I like Shane. I like Shane Bieber.
It's an undisputed fact that he's no higher than fourth.
Correct. But I'm not ready to put him ahead of Shane. I'm not ready to put Shane Bieber ahead of him yet.
Other than his experience in the playoffs, what is showing you that he's a better pitcher than Bieber right now?
Well, nothing yet, but we're not even at the end of April yet. I mean, yes, he's had a lousy month, and you're right. He was bobbing. That was not his best stuff, and his fastball doesn't fool anybody anymore. It's obviously the sinker, it's the cutter, curveball, everything else that he's got. He's got the arsenal, but as far as the fastball goes, when he's forced in 3-1 counts and 2-0 counts to have to throw it past somebody, he's not doing it. I can't disagree with you there, but I'm not ready to crown Bieber as the fourth starter and say Kluber's number 5 and he'll be out of the bullpen in the playoffs. I'm not ready to do that just yet.
Again, I understand that it's April and I'm having this, hypothetical podcast conversation, but Kluber, I want to say that I read a stat that he hadn't walked his 14th man until June of last year, and now he has 15 walks in 31 innings in April. Something's obviously still amiss and still not right with him, and I don't think it's disputed that the top 3 guys would go ahead of him. I just don't think that Tito would actually pull that trigger, but we have to worry about getting to October 1st.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's going to happen either. And like you said, I mean, look, Minnesota's up in the division by 2 games. They just got done playing 6 games against the Orioles.
My God, that Orioles team! Every time I looked up, it was 5-0 Twins, and I was like, do they have to play the Orioles again?
Well, we're getting Baltimore for 4 pretty soon in a couple of weeks, so
yes,
we'll feast on them. I mean, think about it. Minnesota played Baltimore, swept them, played Houston, lost 2 or 3, and then played Baltimore again and swept them again. So, look, the Twins are playing good baseball. Great for them. Fantastic. But I still think this is the Indians' division to win. I still think the Indians' pitching is better. And yes, and executive producer Jeremy pointed out on text, the Twins have double the amount of home runs the Indians have, and that's a problem for sure. And the Twins added a guy in Nelson Cruz that would have been a perfect DH with us. But the Indians have got to find a way. You're right to. It can't be such a chore to score runs. But again, I'm also realizing that 3 games over 500 in April, with Lindor not right, with Jose not right, with Kluber not right, with Clevenger out, with this Luplow, Greg Allen, Naquin, cavalcade of slappies in the outfield, Mike Freeman, having clutch hits, and we're over 500. I'll still take it. Couple of weeks, my emotions may change, my attitude may change, but for now, I'm still cautiously optimistic. All right, dude, that'll do it. That'll wrap us up for another week of the Dery Brothers Tribecast on this off day Monday. The team heading to Miami for Tuesday and Wednesday at the Marlins. Bauer against Sandy Alcantara. We saw him the other day. We'll see him again. And then Kluber against lefty Caleb Smith, who many people probably don't know, but has had pretty good numbers this year. The Marlins pitching isn't their problem. They've got a lot of nice young arms, Todd, but their lineup's a mess. That's basically their story. So
their lineup looked a lot like Tribe lineups the first week of the season.
Yes, no doubt. How about this off day Monday, off day Thursday?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. And then their next off day is not until May 15th. I'm not a fan. I know they're doing it because it's early in the season and weather and all that stuff. But listen, you and I, we need our Tribe every night, man. One more thing before we go.
Every damn night.
On the telephone, I'm not a huge fan of Sunday night. We talked about the broadcast earlier in the podcast, but I'm not a big fan of the Sunday night 7:00 starts. I need a Sunday afternoon when there's not a lot going on. I need Sunday afternoon Tribe ball. The 7:00 Sunday night stuff don't like it.
Yeah, it was a long wait yesterday for that, and then it was a long wait watching the offense try to get some runs, which, but whatever, we went through that. All right, thanks to Mandy Bell from MLB.com, our friends at Groove Ride, and, of course, waitingfornextyear.com. Big week this week with the Marlins and Mariners, and we'll be back, next Monday, Todd? Should we do a little pod before the homestand continues?
Monday taping for sure, and I am going to the game Monday night, so we will do it at some point Monday.
Those are all 6:10 games next week, if I'm not mistaken.
6:10, 1:10 Thursday. 4-game set with the White Sox at home.
And no Eloy Jimenez out. He's out a couple weeks. Did you see that?
Disabled list. That's correct.
Yeah. Or the injured list, whatever they call it. Who knows?
I didn't even see, to be honest with you.
All right, buddy. We'll be back next week. Take it easy.
Thank you.